Hey guys, tonight we slip past timeworn palace gates beneath a moon soaked in honey, where oil lamps flicker like flirtatious eyes, and silk slippers whisper against mosaic floors. The air is thick clove smoke, sweat, and 100 unspoken schemes, and you're somewhere you definitely shouldn't be. Behind the carved wooden screens, past the guards lulled by spiced palm wine, lies the inner court of a West African kingdom once real, now half remembered. You step barefoot onto cool stone, heart pounding like a war drum stitched with secrets. You can hear laughter, delicate and dangerous, weaving through the air like incense. These aren't the wives or warriors you've read about in dusty history books. These are the mistresses, the unofficial women who rule behind closed doors through touch, tears, timing. You've never heard of them, but they decided the fate of kings. They played a longer game. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes adjust to the darkness. There's a hush, a rhythm, a pulse like the palace itself is breathing. The air feels moist, scented with orange blossom water and something faintly metallic, maybe blood, maybe power. The women here do not smile sweetly. They grin like foxes. You're standing in the presence of tacticians in embroidered wrappers, each one fluent in seduction, subterfuge, and survival. The walls are painted in indigo and gold, and behind each curtain waits a story that could ruin a lineage or birth a dynasty. In Dahomey, in Mali, in Ashanti, wherever the throne rose, so too did the shadow court. One young mistress lies sprawled across a woven mat, polishing her teeth with charcoal and salt. Her name will never make it into textbooks, but she once delayed a war by 3 months because the king liked the way she braided his hair during treaty season. Another girl, barely 16, applies kohl around her eyes using the thorn of a baobab tree, each flick a spell. If her eyeliner runs tonight, it could cost her a future son's inheritance. But don't pity them. These women aren't trapped, they're playing. This is a court where power is measured in glances and laughter, and who gets to refill the king's calabash, and who gets to stay until dawn. And you're standing in the middle of it, possibly cursed, definitely uninvited. You can still hear the echoes of their influence in oral histories and folk songs, coded praise names, and suggestive drum beats. One queen mistress was known for wearing bells sewn into her underclothes. The king liked to hear her coming. Another bribed the court's diviner with smoked catfish and gold dust to sabotage a rival's fertility blessing. Yes, the sex was political, but never just about the king. It was about proximity to power, control over narratives, and influence in a world where a woman's best weapon might be her perfume recipe or her silence. Of course, historians still argue whether these women were empowered agents or pawns in a system built to exploit them. Some call them concubines. Others call them politicians with anklets. But you're watching a game unfold where every smile could be a blade, and every pregnancy announcement is a checkmate. Welcome to the inner sanctum. And since no one ever leaves without a story, here's one to start your night. A traveling Portuguese emissary once wrote about a court in what is now Ghana, where the king's favorite mistress, described only as she who speaks with mirrors, was rumored to hold erotic lessons for junior wives in the royal bathhouse. Her specialty? Teaching them how to weep while climaxing. It wasn't just kink, it was politics. The king believed that only a woman who could cry in ecstasy truly loved him. She wept like a river. Her family received a coastal village. But one day, she stopped crying. And the next morning, her private chamber was empty. No one dared ask where she'd gone. That's the thing about mistresses. Their power is never written down, but it's painted in ghostly streaks across palace walls. And tonight, you get to follow those streaks, carefully, You're walking slower now, past courtyards where parrots once gossiped in 3 languages, and the stone benches still carry the ghost heat of bare thighs. Somewhere ahead, you hear giggling. Soft, deliberate kind, as if the sound itself is calculated. And there she is, the queen who never sat still. No crown, no throne, just bare feet that refused to stay in one place and eyes that never blinked first. Her name is lost to official records, but in the corridors of memory, she's known as the Weaver. Not because she spun cloth, though she did, but because she spun entire alliances out of gossip, glances, and a wardrobe of coated fabrics. In this kingdom, her cloth spoke louder than drums. Kente patterns with secret meanings, every color a warning or invitation. Today she wore the pattern for "I see your plan, and I raise you mine." And yes, she was the king's favorite 4. Now but favorites change like the rainy season, suddenly, with thunder. Still, she had an advantage most mistresses didn't. She was terrifyingly clever and endlessly fertile, which made her both respected and envied, a dangerous combo. When she wasn't plaiting the king's beard or whispering strategy into his collarbone, she was busy orchestrating drama in the outer courts. Like the time she arranged for another mistress to be caught with a love charm, stitched into her pillow, one made with snail slime and the toenails of a dead chief. Harmless maybe, but in a court obsessed with spiritual purity, it was enough to get that poor girl reassigned to the celibacy compound, which is exactly as bleak as it sounds. You tiptoe into her quarters. The walls are lined with brass mirrors, not for vanity, no. She used them to read people. A woman who checks her reflection too often, she once said, always has something to hide. She didn't just survive the court. She mastered it. Took lovers of her own in secret, one of whom was allegedly the king's cousin, who died suddenly after swallowing a seed pod meant to increase his stamina. Historians still argue whether she poisoned him or whether the royal herbalist made a fatal mistake. Either way, she wore white to the funeral and danced barefoot until sunrise. Power, for her, was a fluid thing. It flowed through conversations, rituals, and wombs. And speaking of wombs, let's talk about one of the more creative fertility rites she championed. Picture this: a moonless night, a circle of mistresses bathed in salt water, each holding a calabash of goat's milk and crushed shea seeds. In the center, a sacred dancer with honey painted on her inner thighs. The king watched from behind a silk screen. The rite wasn't just spiritual, it was sensual theater. And the weaver choreographed it all. One Portuguese chronicler mentioned a similar event and called it a barbaric love circus. But that's colonial discomfort talking. What he witnessed was a ritual of female solidarity disguised as competition. You see, these women weren't just vying for the king's attention. They were creating spectacle, symbolism, and legacy. And yes, sometimes it got weird. Like the time the weaver faked a miscarriage by smuggling goat blood in a dry gourd between her legs just to delay another mistress's promotion to secondary wife. That stunt bought her 3 more weeks of exclusivity and a new ivory comb set. Not a bad trade, considering. And yet, for all her tricks and triumphs, she was always moving, plotting, whispering, laughing at jokes 2 steps ahead of everyone else. That's how you survive when your power lives between the sheets and behind curtains. You never stop weaving. You never sit still. And when the next mistress rose in favor, some shy, new girl with copper earrings and no clue, the weaver didn't beg or break. She simply switched tactics. Sent a bolt of black-dyed cloth to the king's mother, embroidered with the proverb, "The chicken may sleep, but the hawk never blinks." The mother took the hint. The new girl was reassigned to the province of frogs and mosquitoes. The weaver lived to scheme another season. You're walking faster now, drawn by the pull of drums so low and heavy they seem to vibrate your bones before you hear them. Not battle drums, no, these are different. These are the heartbeat of the night, softer, flirtier, seductive in their rhythm. and you realize you're stepping into a courtyard washed in moonlight, strung with lanterns made from hollowed gourds, and veiled with translucent silk. The scent of roasted plantains and perfumed skin hangs thick in the air. Welcome to the palace's not-so-secret secret, where politics are danced, not decreed. This is where bedroom diplomacy begins. You slip into the shadows just as the mistresses take their places, bodies glistening with palm oil and stories they'll never tell out loud. They dance in a circle, but this isn't about art. It's strategy disguised as celebration. The way she arches her back, the deliberate timing of that ankle twitch, the flick of her wrist, it all means something. One woman spins with her hands above her head, revealing charms tied beneath her arms, symbols meant to draw the king's gaze. Another dances with a small bell in her mouth. If she drops it, she's disqualified from the attention games for the week. But she never drops it. You'd bet your last copper bead that she's had practice. This isn't just flirtation, it's survival through performance. Think courtly love meets Cirque du Soleil, with higher stakes and fewer safety nets. The king watches, of course, behind a carved lattice, sipping honey wine, amused and aware. He'll make his choice before dawn, and everyone knows it. One dance tonight could secure land, status, or even a future husband for a cousin. And one stumble could mean banishment to the embroidery quarters forever. You watch as a new girl steps into the ring. She's not the most graceful, but she knows something the others don't. She carries a scent trail, subtle but potent, made from fermented hibiscus and wild basil. She timed her scent for the wind. It hits the king's nostrils like a memory. He gestures, she wins. Historians still argue whether these dances were real competitions or scripted rituals with preordained outcomes. But that debate misses the point. These women rehearsed, strategized, and seduced through movement, because sometimes their only freedom lived in rhythm. After the dance, the real games begin. In the cool silence of private chambers, bodies become bargaining chips, and secrets are whispered into mouths and thighs. Tonight, a mistress named Tola, famous for her snake-shaped scarification, slips into the king's quarters, not just with perfume on her neck, but information. She knows the name of a traitor double-dealing ivory in the port. She learned it while braiding her cousin's hair, who serves the traitor's wife. That nugget, worth more than gold. She moans his name into the king's shoulder and slips him. The warning in the same breath. He groans, he listens. The traitor is arrested at dawn. Tola gets a new courtyard. This is what sex with kings looks like. Half passion, half paperwork. But not every mistress wants proximity. Some dance only to protect their siblings, to keep their families in good favor. One woman, Fatima, dances just awkwardly enough to stay. Visible but never favored her own delicate rebellion. She shares a bed only when summoned, and even then, she hums lullabies to the king's back until he falls asleep. She's the one who hides letters for servants behind garden stones. She's building her escape, one distraction at a time. You'd never know it from the way she glides across the stones tonight, her wrapper clinging just enough to suggest mischief. One of the eunuchs watches her with suspicion, but says nothing. And then there are the whispered tailies, the ones the drummers tell each other when the lanterns die down. Like the mistress who bedded not the king, but his chief advisor over the course of 2 flood seasons. She used that pillow talk to rewrite 2 royal decrees and secure grain distribution for her village. Her name, forgotten, but her village still eats. And then there's the dance that never happened, the night the king fell asleep drunk, and the women danced anyway. Not for power, not for sex, but just for each other. Laughing barefoot in the rain, ankle bells chiming like distant stars. You won't find that in any archive, but it happened. You can feel it in the dust. Someone is watching you. No, not the king, he's too drunk tonight to notice anything but the shape of his own ego. It's someone quieter, shrouded in white linen, face unreadable but eyes sharp enough to slice through silk. the eunuch. And not just any eunuch, this is the one who knows too much. You see him before the rest do, standing like a pillar of salt near the harem gate, unmoving, listening. You blink, and he's gone, but his shadow stays. He's the keeper of keys, both literal and scandalous. Neutered by design, trusted by default, and yet he's the most dangerous man in the palace, because he's always there. When the king cries in a mistress's lap, when secret gifts change hands, when a woman whispers her true desires into the night, he hears it all. And tonight, he knows something no one else does. One of the mistresses is missing, again. You follow the scent of sandalwood and suspicion, and just as your skin begins to tingle with dread, you see him kneeling by a shattered perfume violin. The hall touching the oil-stained floor like it's a map. He's not surprised. He's tracking. And the question twisting your gut is he trying to help her or make sure she's never found? Now let's pause and whisper about the taboo no one wants to say out loud. Eunuchs were not always sexless. Yes, the body was altered, but desire? Loyalty? Those don't vanish with surgery. Some eunuchs became confidants, even lovers, to the very women they were meant to guard. And this one, call him Salif, had eyes only for one mistress, Amina, the king's third favorite, known for her honey voice and dangerously blunt questions. Amina was smart, too smart, and Salif knew it. He used to slip her books from foreign traders, coded scrolls she read beneath her blanket with a stolen candle stub. They spoke in glances, traded silence like currency. Historians still argue whether Salif broke his vow or simply redefined it. One tale says he helped her fake illness to avoid a royal summons for 3 nights. Another, more whispered version, claims he kissed her through a mosquito net and cried after. Either way, their bond was real. And dangerous. You trail Salif now through narrow halls where the air hangs heavy with charcoal and regret. He moves like smoke, checking corners, lips tight. When he reaches the library room, the forbidden one, where only the king and his advisors are allowed, he stops. The door is ajar. Inside, sandalwood, Amina's scent. Also, a smear of blood on the edge of a scroll. Not much, just enough. Salif doesn't flinch. He steps in and closes the door behind him. Whatever he finds in there, you won't know. Not yet. But the balance has shifted. Elsewhere in the palace, mistresses pretend nothing's wrong. They sip hibiscus tea and talk about anklet trends. But the silence is louder tonight. And someone saw Amina slip a coded letter into Salif's sash 2 nights ago, one marked with the glyph for change. Not love, change. That's what frightens. People, not passion, but intention. One of the older mistresses, a woman who survived 4 kings and 3 rebellions, mutters that it's all happening again. She lights her pipe with trembling fingers and tells a story you'll never forget. There was once a eunuch who helped a mistress sneak out of the palace disguised as a novice priestess. They made it to the river before they were caught. The king ordered her tongue cut out. The eunuch? No one knows. Some say he drowned himself. Others say he still walks the servant tunnels, a ghost in linen, searching for her shadow. Tonight, Salif looks like a man walking toward that same edge. And here's the thing. Power doesn't come from who you sleep with. Not here. It comes from what you're willing to risk. Salif knows the walls have ears. He also knows which walls are crumbling. And Amina? Maybe she's dead. Maybe she escaped. Maybe she's hiding in the library tower with a blade and a plan. You lean closer, breath caught. The mistresses begin to hum again, soft like wind through grass, and one of them slips something. Silver beneath her tongue. A charm? A blade? It doesn't matter. The palace is holding its breath. And so are you. The palace doesn't sleep. It merely blinks slowly, like a crocodile submerged beneath royal stillness, waiting. And tonight, it's hungry. You're back in the garden court, now an artificial Eden. where nothing grows without permission, and even the insects know better than to buzz too loudly. The moon casts long, deliberate shadows, and in the middle of it all, lounging like she owns the stars, is Denny. She isn't the most beautiful. She isn't the most beloved, but she's the most feared. Because Denis trades in secrets and snacks. And in this court, that's practically the same thing. She's perfected the art of perfumed espionage. Her weapons? Smeared cola nuts, eavesdropping. Fans and those sweet sticky date balls laced with just enough cassava to make you talk more than you should. She's the mistress who doesn't dance, doesn't sing, doesn't seduce. She listens. She waits. And when the moment is right, she strikes with a smile and a snack. You watch her now, lounging in the shade of a fig tree with two other mistresses who think they've earned her trust. One's laughing about a failed seduction, the other's complaining about the king's wandering hands. Denis is quiet. She offers them candied ginger and listens closely as they spill things they shouldn't. When they leave, she wraps their discarded food cloths, tucks the crumbs into her pouch, and disappears into a private alcove. Later, she'll take those scraps to the palace herbalist, the one who owes her 3 favors and a cousin's silence. He'll tell her what herb lingers in the digestive oil. And just like that, she knows who's been sneaking into the royal kitchens after curfew, and who's been meeting the Portuguese envoy without permission. Tonight, she has bigger prey. The chief wife's cousin Lady Io has been sending dried leaves to her village under the guise of ritual blessings. But Denis cracked the code. The leaves are laced with clove oil and powdered oyster shells, traditional aphrodisiacs. Someone's building alliances outside the palace walls. That means rebellion. That means leverage. Denis doesn't tell anyone. Yet, she waits. Because information, like palm wine, gets more potent with time. And here's the twist no one sees. Coming, Denis isn't just a mistress. She's a courier for the king's aging mother. Yes, the same woman who pretends to be blind and spends her afternoon spitting beetle nut juice at squirrels. Turns out, Mama knows everything. She planted Denis in the harem like a spy fern, and in return, Denis gets protection, gold jewelry, and access to the royal falcons. Historians still argue whether the old queen mother ever planned a full coup or was just keeping tabs on the sexual politics of her idiot son. Either way, Denis's been intercepting letters, decoding charms, and swapping out fertility potions. With fakes for years. She once smeared the base of a rival's ceremonial stool with crushed dandelion root to cause a rash so painful the poor woman couldn't sit through her own betrothal ceremony. That act alone delayed a political alliance by 2 months and cost a nearby chief his army's support. Of course, not all her tricks are so poetic. There was the poisoned cola nut, the one she gave to the young concubine who kept bragging about. Her unbreakable hips and her special arrangement with the northern emissary. That cola nut was soaked in a bitter bark extract that caused vivid dreams and loose tongues. The girl woke up mid-fever, confessing things no one should have known. 2 guards were executed. Denis, of course, feigned shock. She cried, she prayed. She gave the girl a healing talisman, which was really just a dried seed soaked in vinegar. The girl recovered, eventually. But she never danced again. Her feet wouldn't stop trembling. Now, Denis has a new plan. A charm woven into a comb. Not for herself, but for the chief astrologer. She needs him distracted, flattered, suggestible. Why? Because the next lunar festival is approaching, and the stars will decide who gets to present offerings to the king. A highly political moment. Whoever's seen presenting first gains symbolic seniority for the next lunar cycle. Denis wants it badly, so tonight she's slipping the charmed comb into the astrologer's laundry basket. A little favor, a little influence, a little push. By the time he notices he's making her choice without realizing it, the ritual will be complete. And you're just watching a woman smile into her reflection, comb in hand as the night. Air stirs with the scent of roasted millet and slow, inevitable betrayal. Because in this palace, the most powerful women don't raise their voices. They pass the poison with a kiss and call it hospitality. You wake up sweating. Not from fear, though. There's plenty to fear but from heat. The sun is just beginning to rise, and already the palace bricks are exhaling yesterday's secrets. You follow a procession of silence down toward the bathhouse. This isn't where power meets politics. This is where beauty becomes warfare. You step into the steamy, echoing chamber where bodies glisten like lacquered wood, and the air smells of crushed neem, cocoa butter, and something. Animal. A small figure sits in the corner, legs crossed, applying a thick yellow cream to her thighs with reverent focus. It's crocodile dung. Yes, dried, pulverized, mixed with shea butter and spices. Supposedly wards off infection, sunburn, and rivals. In the palace, beauty isn't decoration. It's a survival strategy with 100 formulas and 10 times as many consequences. Today's beauty regimen is tomorrow's political leverage. Mistresses parade through the steam like living sculptures, some shaved bald to display perfect bone structure. Others painted in streaks of blue clay to enhance their fertility aura. One woman is wrapped in thin coils of copper wire that allegedly attract male attention and repel spiritual attacks. Another flaunts freshly inked scarification symbols running down her spine in a pattern known only to her mother's secret society. Pain is the price of presence. If you can't outtalk a rival, you'd better outshine her. You move through clouds of incense where tattoo artists with hands steadier than assassins etch hidden symbols into the skin just above the hip bone. These aren't just decorative, they're charms, prayers, coded messages. A single misplaced dot can mean the difference between protection and pregnancy curse. No pressure. One girl new, wide-eyed, hopeful, asks for a butterfly design to honor her mother's spirit. She's told, bluntly, that butterflies are symbols of short-lived beauty. She chooses a crocodile instead. Smart move. Crocodiles survive everything. A scarred elder applies the ink with a whisper. Endure. The girl winces but doesn't flinch. She go far. Historians still argue whether these beauty rituals were forms of empowerment or just deeply embedded submission. But anyone who's watched a woman wield hot wax like a weapon knows better. These rituals are theater, they are negotiation, and sometimes they are deadly. Like the time two mistresses competed for the title of first to wake the king. A ceremonial role with cushy perks, extra rations, a private garden, and a chance to present her opinions in court, masked as dream interpretations. One of them, desperate to glow just a little more, rubbed a mixture of ground snail shell and acidic plant sap on her skin. It shimmered. It also burned. She arrived at the king's chamber covered in blisters. Her rival won by default, and smiled. With freshly bleached teeth, but don't think this is all vanity. These women are chemists, strategists, survivalists. They memorize ingredient ratios like war generals. Want to enhance the curve of your hips without gaining weight? That's a paste made from crushed yam, rubbed on the thighs nightly while chanting your father's praise name. Need to make your breasts appear fuller before festival season? That's a leaf poultice worn under a tight wrap while you sleep, paired with a strict no-salt diet. The lengths they go to would terrify modern influencers. And yet, none of it guarantees success. The king might still choose the girl with the crooked smile because her scent reminds him of his nursemaid. That's why some mistresses begin modifying. Smell instead. One hides ground cinnamon behind her ears. Another bathes in rainwater collected only on Thursdays. A third secretly boils the king's shirt in a solution laced with her vaginal fluid. Folk tradition calls it binding. The king calls it comforting. Either way, she gets a new bracelet. Tonight, you'll see one of the strangest rituals. Yet, under a full moon, 3 of the mistresses will lie naked in a salt circle, while a 4th, called the mirror, for reasons no one explains, paints their bodies in ash mixed with kola nut powder. It's said to cleanse jealousy. But, more importantly, it gives them a new story to tell at breakfast, which is often more useful than the ritual itself. You sit in the shadows, watching their skin turn silver in the moonlight, and realize that here, beauty is a currency that's always depreciating. That's why they spend it fast, loud, and with flair. One day, they'll be replaced, wrinkled, forgotten. But tonight, they're glowing like goddesses forged from sweat, pain, and crocodile cream. And tomorrow, they start again. There's a sound tonight you haven't heard before, quiet, almost gentle, like fabric tearing in the dark. It's the sound of loyalty unraveling. The king is dead. Not officially, not yet. But word has already slithered through the palace. Like a python through dry grass, his breath grew shallow. His grip on his favorite staff loosened. And now, all that's left is ceremony and chaos. You feel it in the air, the stillness before a sandstorm. In a kingdom like this, the moment a king's heart stops beating, everything else starts moving. Fast. The question isn't asterisk who loved him, it's who's about to survive him asterisk. And the harem? They're already at war. No one screams. Not yet, that would be bad form. Instead, the mistresses begin their preparations in silence, sharp, deliberate, and cold. You pass one woman slipping a protection charm under her tongue, another braiding her hair into a pattern known as the widow's eye, even though she was never officially a wife. Technicalities mean nothing now. Every mistress with a womb is a potential threat or a potential vessel. A royal child, even one rumored, half-grown, or still invisible, is now a claim to the throne. And claims get dangerous, fast. Remember the weaver? She's back, this time not spinning cloth, but spinning alliances. She's already moved her younger brother into the palace compound under the guise of mourning support. In truth, he's here to count weapons and secure escape routes. Another mistress, Benta, has taken to sleeping in the king's funeral chamber, claiming spiritual possession. Is she grieving? Or just claiming squatters' rights over the body? Historians still argue whether these post-death harem battles were spontaneous or carefully orchestrated, but all agree they were ruthless. In this court, succession is never clean. There are rules, yes, but they're as bendable as a reed in monsoon season. The next king is often a nephew, sometimes a brother, rarely a direct son. But the mother of the next king? Oh, she wins everything. Land, power, immunity. So, of course, every mistress with even a whisper of pregnancy now wraps herself in protective herbs and starts issuing veiled threats. One, barely 18, begins reciting her lineage aloud during meals, reminding everyone that her grandfather once carried the royal spear. Another hires a drummer to play only rhythms associated with fertility deities every time she walks by. It's a not-so-subtle announcement, my womb matters, whether or not there's anything in it. And then come the charms. Blood oaths, taken in moonlight, whispered hexes tied to goat hair and tucked beneath rival pillows. You witness a meeting in the garden between two former enemies, now allies of convenience. They press their thumbs together, say the names of their mothers, and bury a charm wrapped in red cloth beneath the hibiscus bush. It's meant to protect one of them from assassination. Probably, it might also summon rain. No one's entirely sure anymore. Half these rituals are half remembered. But desperation gives them power. The eunuchs, meanwhile, are on high alert. Their allegiance depends on who feeds them first. One accepts a bribe of gold dust hidden in a baked yam. Another is found dead, lips blue, after drinking from a mistress's ceremonial goblet. The line between seduction and poison has never been thinner. Mistresses start whispering that the chief advisor is holding private meetings at midnight, that he's considering a cousin with foreign backing, that he's been spotted speaking with Deniz, that Deni, the mistress who once poisoned her. Rivals' feet. You don't know who to believe. But you do know one thing. The king may be dead, but his women are still very much alive. And they're not going down without a final glittering, terrifying performance. There's a story passed from servant to servant about what happens during transitions like these. They say one mistress always disappears, not killed, not banished, just gone. She takes with her a handful of tokens, hair beads, bits of cloth, rings, and vanishes into the forest. They say she becomes the Shadow Queen, a secret advisor to whoever takes the throne. Maybe it's a myth. Or maybe you just saw her tonight, walking barefoot past the lantern-lit path, veil trailing behind her like a whisper. You couldn't look away. You still can't. Because if she survives this, she'd be more powerful than any queen before her. And if she doesn't, well, someone else just inherited her anklets. You don't notice it at first, the wall. It just looms there, blank and harmless, until a shift in light reveals something ancient etched into its clay skin. Scratches, shapes, faded paint. And suddenly, you're not in the present anymore. You're listening to the palace itself, as it exhales memories. These are the ghost stories the walls remember. Not of kings or conquests, but of vanished women, unfinished rituals, and whispers swallowed by time. You trace your fingers along the grooves of a crude drawing, 3 figures dancing beneath a crescent moon. One missing a head. Some say it's art, some say it's a warning. Either way, this is where the forgotten go. You lean closer, the wall feels warm. And suddenly you remember Mistress 11. No name, no grave. Just that number, 11. The one who arrived with silver rings in her hair and too many questions in her eyes. The one who never fit, never played the game quite right. She wasn't the most beautiful. She was something worse dash, unpredictable dot. They say she entered the harem during the 3rd harvest moon, chosen from a line of daughters for her rare silence. The king liked that, but silence is never empty. Hers was full of watching, reading, learning. Within 2 months, she knew every passageway of the inner court. By the 3rd, she began gifting the king with strange objects. A beetle in amber, a comb carved with northern runes, a stone that sang when wet. He was obsessed. The other mistresses hated her, feared her, and perhaps rightly so. One night, she shared a bed with the king and recited a dream. A red bird flying backwards through smoke. He took it as prophecy. 3 days later, his favorite general drowned during a river crossing. Coincidence? Maybe, or maybe Mistress 11 understood something no one else did. The wall says nothing clearly, just more symbols. But the older servants tell you what they've pieced together. One morning, the guards came to escort Mistress 11 to the fertility chamber. She was gone. No scream, no struggle. Just a curtain fluttering and a smear of what might have been indigo or dried blood. Her wrappers were folded neatly on her sleeping mat. Her anklets sat in a perfect circle by the bath. The king refused to speak for 3 days. Then he burned her name from the court records and declared the number 11 cursed. From that moment on, no mistress was ever assigned that number again. The official story is she ran away. But even the parrots in the garden don't repeat it. They remember too much. Mistresses say her shadow still walks the western hall during the harmattan season, brushing past the incense urns at dawn. Some say she whispers secrets to sleeping women. Others say she appears in water bowls, face blurred, mouth moving. A warning, maybe. Or a promise. And in the decades that followed, any time a mistress fell suddenly ill, or a charm backfired, or a king's interest vanished overnight, someone always muttered, Mistress 11 remembers. You press your ear to the wall. Nothing, but deep down, you know the palace never forgets. You see it in the smallest gestures, the way one mistress refuses to wear silver, the way another won't walk past the west-facing mirror, the old nurse who always lights 2 lamps, one for the living, one for what we lost. Ghosts here aren't dramatic. They're just part of the architecture. And maybe that's the point. Power leaves stains. Influence leaves echoes. And these women, forgotten by name, remembered by fear, left echoes loud enough to shake kingdoms. As the final stars fade and morning begins to press its fingers across the palace walls, the stories settle like dust. The mistresses are waking. New games will begin. But the silence holds. A silence that carries every laugh, lie, kiss, and betrayal that passed through these chambers. You've walked their steps, touched their tools, heard their songs. You know. Now that history isn't just written by victors, it's embroidered by those who survived long enough to smile while bleeding. And now, with your breath soft and your eyes beginning to flutter, let yourself drift. Think of the anklets chiming in a moonlit corridor, the scent of cola nut and charcoal, the flicker of a shadow just beyond the curtain. They're still here, watching, waiting, surviving, just like always. And now, let it all go. Let the palace fade into dusk, the whispers hush beneath layers of time, and the mistresses, those fierce forgotten strategists, slip into the folds of sleep. The anklets are silent now, the oils have cooled. The fans sway gently, stirring only memory. You've wandered through stories half buried and barely told, felt the weight of laughter lined with fear, and watched power slip through silk fingers like sand. You're safe now. Let the walls close softly behind you. Let your body grow heavier, like a curtain drawn over a window at last light. History breathes slower now, calm and complete, just beyond reach. You did survive this night. And maybe, just maybe, you'll remember it tomorrow, not with facts or dates, but with a feeling, a scent, a shimmer of something that refuses to disappear. End of script. Sweet dreams.